Welcome to this video. Students, today we'll talk about George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant. But before we proceed, I would just like to brief you about George Orwell, the famous essayist. His actual name was Eric Arthur Blair, and George Orwell is his pen name. He was born in India at Motihari, Bengal in 1903, and he died very young when he was only 47 in 1950. He has written about 6 novels, including the famous Animal Farm, a witty satirical fable about the failure of Soviet-style communism, and 1984, another very famous novel describing the dehumanization of humanity in a totalitarian world. But he was primarily an essayist and has written around 30 essays, including Inside the Whale, Why I Write, Down the Mine, Shooting an Elephant, Politics and the English Language, Lear, Tolstoy and the Fool, etc. Besides these, he has also written scores of articles on various subjects. He was an autobiographical writer like Charles Lamb, and by reading his essays or novels, we can form and construct his personality and can know him as a man and a thinker. He was a socialist and a keen critique of imperialism, fascism, and capitalism. His works reflect the socio-political conditions of his time and deals with the problem of human freedom. So let's come to today's topic, that is his essay, Shooting an Elephant. The key concepts of this essay are colonial discourse, identity production, that is dominant versus subordinate identity, imperialism, cultural identity, knowledge and power, psychological conflict, human will or individual's will versus imperial will, and power apparatus. This essay is perhaps the most anthologized essays of George Orwell. It was first published in 1950. Shooting an Elephant records a moment of sudden revelation. I would like to quote, "The futility of the white man's dominion in the East," unquote, which is characterized by a moral dilemma. The contradictions in the author's thoughts and the situation in which he was are skillfully depicted by him in this essay. The line which reveals this dilemma is, "All I knew was that I was struck between my hatred of the empire I served and my rage against the evil-spirited beasts, that is, the Burmese, who tried to make my job impossible." For understanding of this essay in an easy way, we can divide it into 4 steps. We can divide it into 4 steps. Number 1, Orwell's position as a police officer in Burma. Number 2, his anti-imperialistic feelings. Number 3, the incident of the shooting of the elephant. And lastly, the analysis of the author's motives in killing the elephant. After that, we'll critically analyze the autobiographical element in the essay and the metaphysical implication of the incident. Orwell started the essay by stating that now I'll read the first paragraph of the essay, the text. In Molmen, in Lower Burma, I was hated by large numbers of people. The only time in my life that I have been important enough for this to happen to me. I was sub-divisional police officer of the town, and in an aimless, petty kind of way, anti-European feeling was very bitter. No one had the guts to raise a riot. But if a European woman went through the bazaars alone, somebody would probably spit beetle juice over her dress. As a police officer, I was an obvious target and was baited whenever it seemed safe to do so. Safe to do so means a safe space is required. So, space is very important here. When a nimble Burman tripped me up on the football field and the referee, another Burman, looked the other way, the crowd yelled with hideous laughter. This happened more than once. In the end, the sneering yellow faces of young men that met me everywhere, the insults hooted after me when I was at a safe distance, got badly on my nerves. The young Buddhist priests were the worst of all. There were several thousands of them in the town, and none of them seemed to have anything to do except stand on street corners and jeer at Europeans. So here we see that in this paragraph, the main points which he reveals is that feeling of contempt against the Europeans. Number 2, the Burmese were marginalized in their own space. Then, because of this, the result was hatred against white men's dominion, and because anti-European feeling was particularly strong and created problems for Orwell also, because he was a police officer there. So he was an obvious target. Okay, so in this way, he just tells us that when he was serving in Imperial India as a police officer in Burma, he was a sub-divisional police officer of the town, but the natives of Burma hated him. The town where he was posted, anti-European feeling was very bitter because these people were marginalized in their own space. And nobody has the courage to rebel or raise a riot. But if a European woman passed through the bazaars alone, somebody would spit beetle juice over her dress, and he was also an obvious target as a police officer because he was a European. He was sneered by young men everywhere, and he was hooted by them insultingly and badly, and this got on his nerves. Okay, in the second paragraph also, he says that all this was perplexing and upsetting, for at that time I had already made up my mind that imperialism was an evil thing, and the sooner I chucked up my job and got out of it, the better. Theoretically and secretly, of course, I was all for the Burmese and all against their oppressors, the British. As for the job I was doing, I hated it more bitterly than I can perhaps make clear. In a job like that, you see the dirty work of empire at close quarters. The wretched prisoners huddling in the stinking cages of the lockups, the grey cowed faces of the long-term convicts, the scarred buttocks of the man who had been balked with bamboos, all these oppressed me with an intolerable sense of guilt. But I could get nothing into perspective. I was young and ill-educated, and I had had to think out my problems in the utter silence that is sorry, uh, imposed on every Englishman in the East. I did not even know that the British Empire is dying. Still less did I know that it is a great deal better than the younger empires that are doing to supplant it. All I knew was that I was stuck between my hatred of the empire I served and my rage against the evil-spirited little beasts who tried to make my job impossible. With one part of my mind, I thought of the British Raj as an unbreakable tyranny, as something clamped down in secularum, that is, it's a Latin phrase which means forever, upon the will of prostrate peoples. With another part, I thought that the greatest joy in the world would be to drive a point into a Buddhist priest's guts. Feelings like these are the normal byproducts of imperialism. Ask any Anglo-Indian official if you can catch him off duty. So in this way, in the second paragraph, Orwell reveals that internally he himself was against imperialism, against colonialism, against British tyranny. But the behavior of the natives of Burma, it perplexed and disturbed him. And because of this dilemma, he regarded imperialism as an evil thing, and he thinks that it would be better if he resigned his job. And the sooner it happens, it will be good. He was in his heart for the Burmese. He was up against the oppressors, the British. He hated his job more bitterly than ever before because it reveals the structure of the colonial setup, that how they dominate these natives and how they torture them. And because of all this, he was in a kind of a moral dilemma. He says that he was ill-educated, and because of all that, he was unable to understand things. In the next paragraph, he narrates a minor incident which has great metaphorical implications. But students, for today, this is all. And now, wait to watch the second part of this video till tomorrow for complete understanding of the essay. Okay? So, thank you so much.